Hi, welcome to our video. This video will cover what you need to know to pass the ACT Math Test Part 2. In this video, we will just give you basic concepts and general rules that will help you along in your journey. Please use this in conjunction with any study materials you are currently using to help you prepare for the exam. If you have any questions, please leave them below or email us at tutoring@thebookkeepersmd.com. Let's get started. The first thing you need to know are your order of operations. The order of operations serves as a guide to help you solve equations with multiple operations, mathematical operations in them. For example, you can have an equation with addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division all in one equation. So in order to help guide you on how to solve this, the order of operations was created. So let's take a look at the order of operations. On the left-hand side of your screen, you'll see the actual order, and on the right-hand side, you'll see the acronym and a way for you to remember, which we'll discuss after we go through the actual steps that you need to take. So the first thing you need to do is attack what's in parentheses. You solve what's in parentheses first. Next, you will solve the exponents. Next, we have multiplication and division. This is generally the order, but it gets a little tricky because between multiplication and division, which one you solve first depends on what's the furthest to the left. So if multiplication comes first in the equation, you would solve that first. But if division comes before the multiplication, then you would divide and then multiply, and then proceed as you normally would. Next, we have our addition, and lastly, we have our subtraction. So, as you see on our left-hand side, we have our steps: parentheses, exponents, multiplication, division, addition, and subtraction. But then on our right side, we have our acronym PEMDAS, which we've plugged in a little saying that we've learned, our colleagues have learned many, many years ago. Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. If you can remember, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, and correspond it to the actual method that you're supposed to use to solve, it works wonders. We've also included a chart to help you identify the different forms of math operations in case there was one that you weren't quite sure about. Let's move on to the next topic. Math definitions. Do you know your basic math definitions? If not, you would definitely want to review these because it's very important to know the general math definitions so that you know exactly what the question is asking you. Let's go through a few. First, we have integer. Integers are whole numbers. Next, we have rational numbers. Rational numbers are numbers that can be expressed as decimals and or fractions. Irrational numbers are the complete opposite. These are numbers that cannot be expressed as decimals or fractions. Next, we have prime numbers. Numbers where the only factors are one in itself. For example, let's look at lucky number 5. Might not be that lucky, but we're going to use the number 5. How do we get 5 if we're multiplying? We will multiply it by 1 and 5. That's it. So 5 essentially is a prime number because you can only multiply it by 1 in itself to get the answer of 5. Next, we have undefined numbers, a number where 0 is in the denominator. Next, absolute values, the positive value of any number other than 0. An example of an absolute value is, what's the absolute value of -3? Answer, +3. Next, let's look at factors. Factors are numbers or quantities that when multiplied by another results in another number. And lastly, we have multiples. Multiples are numbers that can be divided by another number with no remainder. Let's move on to the next concept. Mathematics with positive and negative numbers. We have found that this tends to trip a lot of people up, so we wanted to just give you some general easy rules to help you remember what to do in each case. So first, let's look at addition. So, a positive plus a negative. Our general rule is that whatever the sign of the larger number is will dictate what the sign of the answer is. For example, we have two examples here. In our first example, our problem reads -10 plus 3. In our second example, we have +10 plus -3. So let's go back to our original example, -10 plus 3. We see that 10 is larger than 3 and it just so happens to be negative. So in this case, we know that our answer will be negative. In example 2, however, we see 10 plus -3. 10 is the larger number and it just so happens to be positive. So our answer for example 2 will be positive. Here are your answers. Now let's move on to subtraction. Our general rule is that two negatives equal a positive. So let's look at our problem. Step 1 just shows our problem. 5 minus -2. So since it's the minus and the -2, those are two negatives. So what does that equal? A positive or a plus sign. So let's move on to step 2, which shows how the equation now reads. 5 plus 2 equals, and our answer is 7. Now let's move on to multiplication. Our general rules are if you're multiplying positive and negative numbers, if there are an odd number of negative signs, your answer will be negative. If there are an even number of negative signs in your problem, you will have a positive answer. If there are 0 negative signs in your problem, the answer is positive because there are no negatives in this equation. So let's look at our general example here. In our general example, we have -3 multiplied by 2 multiplied by -1. So if we just look at the problem, we see that there are two negative numbers. 2 is an even number. So if we go by our general rule on the second line, we will see that an even number of negative signs will give us a positive answer. And as you can see, our answer is a positive 6. Contrary to our first example, let's look at example 2. -3 multiplied by 2 multiplied by 1. In this problem, we only have one negative number. 1 is an odd number. So if we go by our general rule, you have an odd number of negative signs, your answer will be negative. Therefore, our answer in this problem is -6. Lastly, we're going to discuss division. Pretty simple here. We only have two general rules. Pretty simple and straightforward. Let's look at them now. Positive numbers divided by a negative number will give you a negative answer. A negative divided by another negative number will give you a positive answer. Clear cut and simple. Please feel free to write down these notes, rewrite these notes, memorize these notes. This will help you in the long run, even when it comes to fractions and other different forms of math. Let's move on to our last topic that we're going to discuss in this video. Now let's discuss mean and average. The formula to calculate mean and average is the sum of the numbers over the total amount of numbers present. Some may look at this and be a little confused, but thankful for you, we have an example. Our example asks us, what is the mean and or average of 3, 15, 22, and 40? Step 1 is to plug these numbers into our equation. So our numerator states that the sum of the numbers is the numerator to help us solve. So let's add 3 plus 15 plus 22 plus 40. So now let's look at our denominator, the amount of numbers present. To get this, all we have to do is actually count the numbers present. So 3 is our first number, 15 is our second number, 22 is our third number, and 40 is our fourth number, so we know that there are 4 numbers present. Step 2 shows the problem after we've done the math in the numerator. So now we have 80 over 40. Once we do the math, we now have our answer of 20. So when asked what's the mean of 3, 15, 22, and 40, the answer is 20. If asked what is the average of 3, 15, 22, and 40, our answer once again is 20. We hope that this helps you prepare for your exam, prepare for any math classes you may have, Or if you just generally wanted to know this, we hope that we have helped you. If you have any questions, leave them below or feel free to email us at tutoring@thebookkeepersmd.com. Good luck with your exam and new videos coming soon.